see.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call this City Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, will you call the roll?
Councilman Duper.
Present.
Councilman Daly.
Here.
Councilman Brower.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tempore Popescu.
Here.
And Mayor Rigsby.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. Next, we move to our invocation and pledge of allegiance by Councilman Daly.
Father God, we thank you for the many blessings you continue to bestow upon each one of us and on our country. We pray that you will be with our leaders in these very challenging times, both at a national level as well as the state, as well as our city. And we thank you for the blessings you continue to provide. In your name we pray. Amen. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Are there any items to be added or deleted?
No, sir.
Okay, then that brings us to our oral report public participation time. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on any items not on the agenda? That's for the other, we haven't called that to order yet, but we will. Seeing no takers, I have two requests, but they're on agenda items. Now what I'll do is I'll defer to the chair of the RDA to call it to order and deal with his items.
We're going to go ahead and just change the order a little bit and conclude the RDA agenda, which includes the closed session report from our attorney, and then after that, we'll just move forward with the RDA agenda and finish that. Go ahead.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, as you know, we've been in closed session with the Redevelopment Agency Board on item number 1, which was a conference with legal counsel regarding anticipated litigation. This matter involves possible litigation by the League of California Cities and the California Redevelopment Association to take a legal look at ABX 126 and ABX 127, which were trailer bills to the budget, which is before the legislature and the governor this evening. The council did give direction to staff to go forward to protect the interests of the agency in that litigation by joining in the litigation. The initial cost was a minimal $400 in that regard. And that is all I have to report at this time.
Are there any items to be added or deleted for the RDA agenda?
No, sir.
I guess we'll go ahead and open public comments for the RDA as well. Are there any people in the audience that would like to make any public comments? Seeing none, there are no conflicts of interest, and we'll go ahead and move to item number 1, which is the minutes of the June 14 meeting. Do I hear a motion that we approve that?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
It is so moved. Hearing no opposition, we'll moving on to item number 2, which is a quarterly report from the Chamber of Commerce and a request for disbursement of funds pursuant to the agreement with the agency.
Move it.
I hear a motion by the mayor.
Second.
A second by Mr. Duper. Any opposition to item number 2? Hearing none, is so moved. Any reports from any members of the staff? Seeing none, we are adjourned the agency, and we reconvene the regular city council. The mayor, thank you.
Okay, there are conflict of interest issues we will deal with when the items arise, as usual. And that brings us to item number 1. We have a presentation for Lieutenant Nina Jamson. I guess the department has a practice of moving people around occasionally, and Nina served with us for 2 years. And as our lieutenant, she's taken us through some really interesting times, including an invasion of our town by a wall of mud, and the excellent response of the department for that. We appreciate that very much. She's moving on to her next responsibility. And we have a certificate of appreciation to present to her. And I'll read some of the items here. The whole thing would be too much because she's done so much, but lots of whereases. States that she came to the United States from Helsinki, Finland at the age of 22 and became a law enforcement officer in October of 1988. And during her career, moved up through the ranks to detective and sergeant and then to lieutenant, and came on board with us in 2009 to serve as the liaison to our city and to Grand Terrace, and that she was the first woman to receive the title of Use of Force Expert Range Master, and started the solution-oriented policing team, lowering the crime rate in our city. She's always demonstrated professionalism in law enforcement, as now being reassigned to the Academy. Now therefore be it resolved that the City Council of the City of Loma Linda, on behalf of the citizens of the community, presents this certificate of appreciation to Lieutenant Nina Jamson in recognition of her dedication and commitment to high-quality law enforcement to protect the citizens of this community. Be it further resolved that we extend our best wishes to you for a successful future career in law enforcement. Please come forward. We would accept a speech if you chose to give one.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to work here. Truly a pleasure. The staff here is, I don't have words to tell you how great staff is and hardworking individuals. So, truly been a pleasure. And I think that the mud experience was certainly an experience for all of us. And I'm glad that we handled it the way we did and nobody got hurt. So, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
And I think I'm up next.
Yes, please.
I prepared a long speech. My replacement, it is a pleasure and honor to introduce the new lieutenant, and it is not Nina Jamson that it says back there, so we need to fix that, even though we dress alike. The new lieutenant came to the Sheriff's Department in 1985, and he was first a motor pool assistant, a civilian employee. In 1989, he went through the Sheriff's Academy up in Devore, and later on he moved on to corrections, served there some time, and then as a patrol deputy he went out to patrol in Hesperia, Victorville County area, and Victorville City area. In 1993, he was promoted to detective, and he moved on to our narcotics SWAT team. Later on in 1995, he became part of the Inland Regional Narcotics Enforcement Team, dealing with high quantity of narcotics and large cases. And in 1998, he was promoted to sergeant, and he again went back to corrections. And after serving there about 2 years, he again went back to Inland Regional Narcotics Enforcement Team as a sergeant now. And in 2005, he came to Central Patrol as a sergeant and worked here, City of Loma Linda, Grand Terrace, so he's not new to the area. And in 2007, he went back to SED, which is our Specialized Enforcement Division, and was part of SWAT again. In 2008, he was promoted to lieutenant and went back into corrections at Central Detention Center. And in 2010, he went to the academy for about a year, and now he's here. It's a pleasure to introduce him. He's going to be a great addition to the City of Loma Linda and will do a great job for you. And it is Lieutenant Steve Dorsey.
Thank you, Lieutenant Jamson. I really look forward to working with the city. I grew up in the Inland Empire and had many opportunities as a child to come through the city here. And growing up in Redlands, very close. I now live in the East Highlands, and my children grew up in this area, and I have deep roots with family members. So I take a lot of pride in this area. In 2005, when I worked here, I truly did enjoy working here in the city of Grand Terrace and city of Loma Linda. And when I was asked to go back to the Special Enforcement Division when they created that, I asked if I was really being asked or told to go because I enjoyed it here so much. And I did move on and fulfill that obligation, but I'm truly happy to be back here, and I look forward to working with this city. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and welcome to the city. We have item number 3, a public hearing on Council Bill R-2011-28 about the annual report for assessments and landscape maintenance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Oh,
Sorry, I forgot something.
this is our routine. Every year we come to you to the City Council to approve the landscape maintenance district. And we have Will Dan help me with the study and to prepare the annual report. And for next fiscal year, our assessment is estimated to be about $380,000, and our estimate expenditures is $399,000. But we do have money in the reserve that we can use for the balance.
I'll go ahead and, I guess there's a public hearing. I apologize.
That's pretty much in my report.
Okay, are there any questions of staff? If not, then we'll proceed to the public hearing. Is there anyone who'd like to speak on this topic? Doesn't look like any excited people, so we'll close the public hearing and we'll proceed to council action.
I'll go ahead and move Council Bill R-2011-28.
I'll second it.
Okay, is there any discussion of that? Hearing none, is there any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. We'll move to item number 4, public hearing, Council Bill R-2011-29, and this is about Street Light Benefit Assessment District.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, again, this is very similar to LMD. Every year we come back to the City Council to approve the Street Light Assessment District. We have retained Muni Financial to prepare an annual report. For next fiscal year, we estimate an assessment of $341,000 and expenditures of $368,000, and we do have money in reserve to pay for the difference. In addition, I'd like to report that earlier this year we received $260,000 from an energy grant, and we did purchase the LED light bulbs, and it's now at the city yard. So this summer, the city crew will be start installing that light. And by doing so, I'm hoping that we'll save about $60,000 a year in the energy bill.
How many light bulbs did we get for $260,000?
A little bit over 200 light bulbs.
200 light bulbs, they're that much each?
Well, yes, because what we plan to do is we plan to replace the light along Barton Road from pretty much Waterman to almost Newport.
You're going
And
with
then-
new technology on that, too, right?
Yes, it's LEDs. And also on, there's one more street, I can't remember. I think it's have to do Whittier, right by the Brentwood Elementary School. So, the whole street. Yes, sir.
Question, this budget that's in the documents that we have, does that reflect that 60,000 savings or not?
Not yet.
Okay. So there is hopefully realization our actual utility budget may come in less than what's in here once we get those in during this year.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
And would the district then repay its the money that we've expended out of the general fund?
No, we have not spent any money on the general fund yet because we still have a balance in the street lights.
In the street light district, okay.
Question.
I just want to be sure I understand. So with the 368,000 anticipated expenditure, we're talking about not only maintaining what we have, but replacing to higher efficiency bulbs as well.
Yes, sir.
If we were not replacing the bulbs, what would it cost to sustain the system that we have?
This is the number, 368 is using existing numbers, not replacing the light bulb yet. So my goal is next year to come back and reduce that by about $60,000.
Okay. I'm just thinking that may be a good business to get into, replacing light bulbs and street lights.
Yes. And what's so nice about it, we received grant money to start off with.
Thank you.
It sounds like it has about a 4-year payback, even if there were no grant monies. So that it may be something we'd be willing to do going forward on a gradual replacement basis.
And I want to, again, point out that the city staff will do installation, so.
Just a comment on that. We received complaints for burnt-out streetlights and all the lighting and stuff, you know, up and down Barton especially. And with the new style lights, that should actually alleviate some of that as well, because we shouldn't have those burnouts. So it's a cosmetic thing as well, and tends to be what the public seems to want. So.
Do you have any statistics on the brightness relative to the current lighting?
Yes.
Are they equivalent?
Yes.
Are they directed more downward than the current lighting, so they're more astronomy friendly?
Yes, it's more downward, yes. And we
Okay.
tested at 3 locations so far, so it's so far so good.
Do they have enough lateral spillover of light that they provide as much?
It's different color, you know, the traditional light bulb is more like yellow, and this new one is whiter and it look brighter for some reason. But I have not done the study to see how laterally how far it goes.
Okay.
But the current bulbs are orange.
Yes.
And that's because that's to deal with fog issues that we have in the winter, as my understanding. Is that right?
It has more to do with I think there's sodium vapor
Sodium.
lamps.
Yes, so it's
And they just happen to be
gas.
of that. It's whatever the emission lines are for sodium.
Okay.
Okay, we need to open the public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to speak on this issue? I see no movement. We'll close the public hearing. Does the council choose to make any motions?
Move 2011-29.
Second that motion.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. We'll move to the consent calendar. The conflicted part of the demands register is separated out, so the consent calendar is unencumbered, I believe, by conflict of interest. Are there any items anyone would like to remove, or would someone like to make a motion on the entire consent
I'll
calendar?
make a
Just had
motion.
quick
Go ahead.
clarification, maybe Dr. Jelly can shed some light on this. Item number 1, which is number 11, I'm sorry, an agreement between the city and Omnitrans for one-time funding for a college free pass pilot program. I'm not sure I'm understanding. Is it $12,000 the money that we're paying as a city?
Let me explain. This is the AQMD money is to reduce the air quality, to improve the air quality that we receive from the state every year, and so it's allowed to use for this purpose.
So it's money that's not taken out of the regular general fund, but rather from a grant?
Correct.
Is that a grant exactly for this amount, or is it
No.
more than this?
Well, the grant, no, the money is more, but for this particular program is $12,000.
Okay, thank you.
I don't want to pull the item, but if I can just
Go
comment
ahead.
briefly on the fire department report. I'm still coming up to speed on some of these things, but this is the second year I've seen one, and it still stuns me that 1.2%, if I'm reading this correctly, of the effort of the fire department goes into fires. Most of it goes into medical aid and dealing with traffic. Most of it goes to medical aid.
That's because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Okay.
We only have 1.2% cure because we spend so much on prevention.
So maybe it should be entitled the Medical Aid Department.
There you go. There you go.
Yeah, I'm happy. I'd be happy if it was 0 for fire suppression. However, the guys would like to have more action than that. But maybe you can get all your action on mutual aid. Yes.
Just on a side note, there was a recent accident on Mountain View right behind me on Sunday night. And the gentleman was okay, although I'm not sure what happened to him later. It was a motorcycle. And it was amazing how I was there literally 2 seconds after the accident. And within, seemed like 5 minutes, we had 4 police cars and the fire department and an ambulance. I mean, the response time was absolutely incredible. Mind you, it was close to 11 o'clock on a Sunday night. But anyway, it was very impressive to see how quickly they came on scene. So we're very thankful for their hard work.
One other question, if I could direct it to the fire department. 9.5% of the effort was to false alarms. What's the policy on that? Do you have a lot of repeat calls on that, or and is there a penalty if I keep setting my fire or security alarm off that bring you out?
Let me begin saying I'm filling in for Chief Bender. He's on vacation in Montana. With the construction at both the university and VA, we seem to be getting a lot of false alarms because of that ongoing construction, and that's to be anticipated. Until those projects are completed, that's just kind of it's as they move detectors and do that kind of construction, it just tends to set off a lot of false alarms. So I think some of this might be a little bit high, but typically the false alarms are at the university facilities. Obviously, they have more alarms than anybody else, but again, I think we're seeing a higher number just because of the construction.
Let me jump in real quick on that too. And Chief Bender's addressed it a couple of times too. Just by nature of what we're calling a false alarm is actually not necessarily a false alarm. For example, in the retirement homes, some of them where they have kitchenettes and things in their rooms, and let's say they leave a hot plate on and it starts to smoke, and the smoke detector picks it up and it activates, that response out is considered, quote unquote, a false alarm, but in a sense, it actually did exactly what it's designed to do, and that's the appropriate response that we wanted them to do. So I know he's said that a few times, that what we, quote unquote, call a false alarm is not a false alarm, it's just there wasn't fire there when you arrived, but yet the alarm was functioning the way it was supposed to function.
Right.
So we want those to continue.
And to categorize each one of those, to break them down, it's just kind of a catch-all in that category is a false alarm, but.
Right. Yeah, and it's noted down there, but just so people don't think there's a huge amount of false alarms, we're responding, and that's what we want our alarms to go off, so.
Thank you.
Mr.
Go ahead.
Mayor.
Go ahead.
Mr. Manager, would you mind just commenting on item 9 briefly, removing some of the debris from the storm basins and how that'll help us prepare for any future floods and when this activity should start?
Yes, sir. As you all remember, that on December 20th, we have major storm that pretty much the dirt came in from the South Hill and filled up the 3 detention basin or debris basin, one at the end of Richardson, another one at the end of Mountain View, and another one at the end of Whittier. So it's pretty much filled up the 3 basin. So the contractor, this contract is to remove the debris from the basin. And the idea is to move the debris to the city-owned property on the south side of Redlands Boulevard, west of California Street. So that when we're ready to develop, we can use that dirt to fill up the site. We also have a stockpile during the storm at the corner right here at the intersection of Lawton and Loma Linda, and also have stockpile at Barton and Mountain View. It just happened, we have a total about 10,000 cubic yard. It just happened that those two property are owned by the same property owner, and he asked that maybe instead of removing from both sides, we can remove from one side 10,000 cubic yard from the property over here at the northeast corner. So we will be doing that. We will be doing that. And the route, the haul route, they will come out from Whittier to Beaumont and north on Mountain View. The same thing with the Richardson. They will come down Lawton and go east on Lawton to Mountain View and go north. The dirt on Mountain View Basin, because we own the land in the South Hill, we have a place that we can put it back in the hill that it's not going to cost any more erosion in the future if it happened to rain again, because we put it in the back and we bench it in so have proper backfill. So,
And that work will commence approximately when?
probably in 2 weeks.
Okay.
So you will start seeing a lot of truck moving up and down the street. And the funding for this project is 75% paid for by FEMA, and the 75%, the remaining 25% will be paid for by the state, and the city pay about 6%.
And a follow-up question, do we have any information from the county flood control district as far as San Mateo and removing those debris? Those are certainly just as important to anyone that's affected by that drainage.
Yes, the county gave me an estimate about 5.5 million cubic yard of dirt in the channel that to be removed. And they did have a bid. The bid opening was supposed to be next week. And when that happened, they will use Mountain View as a route to go north, or San Mateo Canyon Road to go south.
So all indications the county will take care of that in the next month or two, hopefully.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
I just want to make a side comment. During those floods, not only did it affect us, but it affected neighborhood communities. The bridge going over Alabama was affected. It was closed for a number of months. And of course, many of you heard about the 330 being basically washed out. And it was just amazing that within 6 months, basically both of those roadways have been fixed, the 330 up to Big Bear, same for the Alabama, and we ourselves are in the process. So it's amazing how within our state, in spite of all of our problems and headaches, we are able to get the roads fixed rather quickly. And I applaud not only our staff, but the staff of the county and the state for really fixing up some of these vital areas for our residents.
I want to point out that this is a reimbursement fund. So the city had to front the money first and try to get reimbursed from the federal and the state.
Thank goodness we have reserves.
Yes.
Okay, well, that wasn't much of a consent calendar. It was more of a discussion calendar, but now that we've discussed it, we've got a motion and a second. Is there any opposition?
Did we already make the motion?
There was a motion. Okay, did someone second it then?
I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay, any further discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. We move to item 15, Council Bill O-2011-07, prohibiting medical marijuana dispensaries. This is second reading. Roll call vote. Mr. City Attorney.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, as you recall, the City Council has previously conducted a public hearing on this item and introduced it. Before you this evening is the adopting action. The recommendation is to waive reading of Council Bill O-2011-07 in its entirety and direct the clerk to read by title only and adopt by roll call vote. I'd be happy to answer any questions if there are any.
Okay, we had our public hearing on this last meeting. You have a comment? Anybody?
I'll move the attorney's language that was recommended for moving this forward and title only.
I'll second that.
Okay, Madam Clerk.
It is entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Loma Linda, adding a new Chapter 9.24, Medical Marijuana Distribution Facilities, to Title 9, Public Peace, Morals, and Welfare, and a new Chapter 17.100, Medical Marijuana Distribution Facilities, to Title 17, Zoning of the Loma Linda Municipal Code. You may vote. Passes unanimously.
Okay, we'll move to item number 16, the demands register, and I will relinquish the chair.
We have before us the demands register, which was pulled separate from our regular one because it involves university issues, and I think myself, Mr. Daly, and Mr. Duper are going to vote on this. I do had a quick question as I was looking at it. I noticed that one of the items is a Drayson Center membership for $2,100. It was my understanding that we were no longer paying for those.
Only the fire department staff that on duty is allowed to use the Drayson Center. So the staff that's on duty can use the Drayson Center.
So we are paying for the fire department, part of the fire department's memberships.
Correct, but it's a rotating members, not one individual person.
Thank you. Do I hear a motion for these two items?
Just for clarification, so we pay for a membership for the duty guys to go out there? Okay. I'll make a motion to move the consent calendar.
And I'll make a second with a comment that maybe the city clerk and city manager should have their dues paid so they get the same benefit. Yeah.
It's a joking amendment or a? Okay. All right. Seeing a motion and a second, it is so passed. Hearing no opposition, I relinquish the chair to the mayor.
Okay, now we get to divide up committee and board appointments. Item 17. We'll go through these one at a time. We have, I believe, on the budget committee, a loss of 2 members. We had one that retired, and we recognized that retirement very recently. And then someone else has declined consideration for another term, and that leaves 2 open seats. The recommendation is to reduce the membership from 7 to 5. Is there any comment or suggestion other than that?
Mr. Mayor, we
Yes.
did receive an application late yesterday. It should be in your packet.
Okay.
From Mr. Gary Nelson.
Okay.
So at least one of the vacancies could be replaced.
I'm very familiar with that applicant and recommend him highly.
And I would concur. I know Gary quite well, and I think he would be a valuable addition. In addition to that, I just learned about these vacancies, and I know a couple of other people that may be interested, so I would prefer we do not reduce from the number of people on the budget committee until we see if there's any other interest in it.
Are you comfortable with adding Mr. Nelson at this
Absolutely.
time? Okay,
And
so
then
at
keep-
this
I would
point-
highly recommend Gary
Okay.
Nelson.
And then that would keep one
That would
other
leave one
seat
opening.
open.
Correct.
Is that a motion?
That'll be a motion.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, discussion.
I would support that. The only comment I would have, certain commissions and committees, such as Planning Commission, for example, have to be residents of Loma Linda, members of our committees. We haven't made that a requirement. Mr. Nelson is not. I'm very comfortable, though, with having someone with his experience, even though he's not a resident, as long as I still think majority of our committees should be residents, and we can appoint him without that being an issue. But if at some point in time that we have some committee that the majority of the potential members are not residents of Loma Linda, then, you know, it might be an issue, but we're nowhere near there.
Do we need to refer to the city attorney on that? Because I'm all of a sudden you just made me uncomfortable.
Do you have any problem with committee members not being citizens of Loma Linda?
No.
I personally have a problem with it.
I'm not aware of any legal impediment to appointing on some of these committees a person who is not a resident of the city. The municipal code, I'd have to look at it, but I believe it does specify for planning commission, Pam, that they do have to reside in the city.
I would point out that his current role is president of Loma Credit Union, which has a significant stake in the success of our community. And he has a good track record of competence, and I think he would look out after the city's best interest.
And he is, I would say, in the category of a fiscal conservative, from my experience.
That withstanding, and I'll have to make the only objection, obviously, here on the board, and he might be the greatest guy in the entire world, and we probably would get along just fine. I cannot support somebody who doesn't live in the city to be on our budget committee making decisions about our money and how it's spent. I just can't do that. I don't think it's right.
Okay, any other comments? Go ahead.
I understand Mr. Duper's concern. We do have other members on other committees that actually don't live in Loma Linda, but I guess we'll deal with those when we get to it. But
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
a few years back, the city council took the stand that some of the committees, it was more important to have the expertise of the members rather than having them actually live in Loma Linda. And some of the budget committee members had businesses here but did not live here. Personnel board is very similar. It was more important that they had the expertise in personnel issues and personnel law. Planning commission is by ordinance that they must be an electorate of the city.
Okay, is there any other discussion?
Not to beleaguer it, and this is not a personal issue with this gentleman, and obviously it comes very highly recommended from everybody else here. We just get into issues with budgets and money, and there's a lot of things that have factors there, such as our public safety. So when I think a community member who lives in the community has more of a stake in how money is spent. So that's my comment. I'll leave it at that.
Okay, then we will proceed, since there's apparently some opposition, we'll proceed to a vote. Those in favor of this nominee, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Are those opposed?
Nay.
Okay, that passes 4-1. And contained within that motion was keeping the positions open. So there's one more position open.
Does that include the reappointment of Robert Frost and Gordon Hughes and Kurt Swigert?
Okay, let's do that as a separate vote because I think there's a different outcome.
I'll go ahead and make a motion to reappoint those members who've chosen to stay and whose terms are expiring.
Do we know their residence status? Okay.
Then I'll second that.
Okay, is there any opposition to that motion? Hearing none, they're reappointed. Now we move to the Historical Commission. We have 2 terms expiring, and I believe they've both expressed an interest in continuing to serve, except one has not given us any indication. So how do we deal with non-response?
We can leave the membership as is with a vacancy. We can reduce the membership. I would prefer we leave it and again see if anyone else chooses to hopefully be persuaded to serve. So I'll make a motion or move the action to reappoint Michael Stewart and leave the number as it currently is listed.
I'll second that.
Okay, so that is a non-reappointment of the non-responding Lori Curtis.
No, it did not include her.
Okay.
I'm sorry if I didn't make that clear. If she is not responding, I don't see the point of reappointing unless anyone has information that she's interested in continuing.
I believe she is an archivist with the university, and she was originally appointed to the committee because of her experience.
Do we have any attendance information?
She has, she's been attending all the meetings very regularly, and she's a very active part of a very active committee. So
Okay.
I'd ask that you reappoint her and let her decline that if that's
So-
the case, because
So as best you know, she's probably willing to continue to serve even though she didn't respond.
correct.
Okay. I will either amend my motion or I'll tell you, make it cleaner, I'll start over. Withdraw my previous action. I will move that we reappoint both members of the Historic Commission whose terms are expiring.
And I'll go ahead and second that. Thank you for the clarification, Mr. Conrad.
Okay, discussion, go ahead.
What do we do to reach out to, I'm looking at the dates, and there are a few, I think the most recent new appointment was in 2007. A lot of these people look like they've had tenure on this committee for a long, long time, and not that that's bad. But what do we do to reach out to recruit new members that might have an interest in getting involved in civic activities like this?
Well, by code, each December, before December 31, I must post all of the committees and the members whose terms would be expiring June 30th of the following year. That's also posted on our website, along with a description of each committee and their meeting dates, as well as an application to serve.
Okay. The other comment that I'd have would be to follow up on Councilman Duper's comments. Evidently, you do not have to be a resident in Loma Linda to be a part of this historical commission as well.
Correct,
You'd need to have an interest in the history of Loma Linda.
correct.
Okay.
Just, I guess I want to clarify my position on this. This, to me, as I see as kind of a different thing with more of a community feel to it. It doesn't just stop at the borders. So my main concern was previously with budget and issues directly that affect the city, but this I have no issue with.
Okay, there's a motion to reappoint. Is there any opposition? Hearing none, they're reappointed. We'll move to the Parks, Recreation, Beautification Committee. And there we have 2 terms expiring. We have a request.
Let me add, since I missed both George Pender and Dick Wiley, they want to continue to become a member. But if you look at Mr. Isaac Kim, who's missing 6 out of 7 meetings. So and we have Ms. Dory Morgan, who she used to be on the committee, but because of her work schedule, she had to resign. But now her schedule is opening up again, so she would like to be on the committees again. So I recommend that we remove Mr. Isaac Kim and put Dory Morgan back on the committees.
I'll make a motion that we go along with the city manager's recommendation.
Second.
When was Mr. Kim's term ending? Do we have precedent for removing for non-attendance without at least communicating with the person? Has anybody talked to him about it?
You know, just for the record, he's missed the most, but there are a lot of other absences here too. It doesn't appear to be a very active committee. Is that an inappropriate observation?
I'm sorry if I can comment. You know, a lot of this has been a committee that's a long-standing, functioning committee that does and has done a lot of very worthwhile work in direction for all the items listed here, but I think everyone, including this committee, senses that, with our limitations, there are not any huge projects that, can be undertaken. And I think there's frustration based on that, at least in some of my private conversations with a couple of the members. So I think that's, in my mind, one of the big issues. And please feel free to comment. We have Betty here that might also have some comments. But it just, that's what I've had indicated to me personally, that there's things, small things that can be done, and those are important. But as far as heading in any new significant projects, we're in a tough spot.
We're talking about budget limitations,
Budget,
don't provide
staff, all
opportunity for
those
them to do
things together, and just even the beautification, some of the, we're trying to maintain things, but we know our budgets are so tight, so it just almost gets a little bit frustrating to talk too much about it when you can't do some of the things we'd all like to.
Well, let me add, since I've been here 10 years now with the committees, service committee liaison, when I started working, we have a lot of requests and a lot of demand for parks and park use. And since then, we have completed a lot of them. And so now we get to the point that we can't maintain it anymore. And we don't have, with the new law that come out about the water consumption, we have to reduce water consumption. Now I'm getting in trouble because I build too many parks. So it's that kind of catch-22.
But then it would seem that we either need to redefine the mandate and charge to the committee so they've got some activity to pursue, or perhaps abandon the committee at this point.
No, what we've been doing is, instead of meeting every month, we're now going to meet every 2 months, or eventually every quarter. It depends on the committees. So we start moving to less frequent.
I'm not opposed to continuing the committee, but if the agenda has run out, then at a certain point we have to decide if this is a committee that needs to sustain itself or not. And what I hear you saying is there continue to be issues that need to be addressed, but perhaps not as frequently as in the past. But the budget issues, as we know, aren't going to change,
Well,
at
it's
least
not
in the foreseeable future.
It's not called the Park Creation Committee. It's Park
I understand.
Recreation.
Duly corrected.
I think Councilman Daley's points are very good, but there's no question the committee serves a very valuable function, even though it may be at a less exciting and active level than it once was.
Mr. Wiley's here, and I'll have to apologize. He actually requested to speak on 2 items that we blew right through.
I was just wondering about that. That one on the arteries.
Yeah, you can speak on any item you like at this point.
Oh, that's okay. One thing that maybe the council is unaware of, at Historic, there's a lot of discussion going on. What can we do? Well, there are not funds set aside for Historic. At that point, we bring up ideas. Of course, the question is, where's the money going to come from? We don't have the money. We can't do the project. What can we do in the interim? And you see our history fair every year. Fortunately and unfortunately, the chairman is through teaching school, has retired, so he's going to be throwing a lot of time at historical, and there's a lot of ideas that are going on that you don't see in the community. There's going to be planning for a big get-together maybe next year with the mission school. It's a celebration. You don't plan this in a month. So there's a lot of these things that are, you don't see going on, but are happening. And at some point when the money that is being used from insurance is put the roof on the coal house at Heritage Park, that's not coming out of the city really. that's coming out of insurance money for damage that was done to the place before it was moved. And this is how some of it's being used. The parks, we have people putting in applications. We want to use the park. We want to use the facilities. And we approve things like that or other things. So there's a lot you don't see going on here. And if the money's there, some projects come forward. So outside of that, that's all. The one I was asking about on that, H13, I think it is, on a consent calendar, I know it was about
Yeah, it's the Measure I Jurisdiction Master Agreement. He had a question. He said, what is that
the
agreement
arteries and,
with Measure I?
Measure I is half-cent sales tax.
no, there was a study, I think, for transportation arteries and,
Yes,
Something
but
like
what
that.
happened is the half-cent sales tax money go to Sandbag, and Sandbag kind of split the money among
Okay.
every cities,
Right.
and we get our
but it's not,
portion.
it's not studying arterial routes and impacts in the city then?
There's different pot of money. There's a pot of money for the city, designated for the city. There's also another pot of fund for the interchange, the regional transportation. So they're used for different purposes.
Okay.
Yeah, and I sit on Sandbag, and this arterial fund, there's certain funds that Sandbag passes through from Measure I, and it's a county-wide initiative.
Right.
And one of those is for the arterial funds, and that money is not split up evenly among the cities. It's not based on population. It's based on approved projects in their queue of things to do. And apparently, we've got a fairly big chunk. We're getting more out of that than our population would predict because we have projects in line.
Okay. That other one I'll bring up maybe at another one of your meetings for
Yeah.
the marijuana
If I
stuff.
can respond.
Go ahead.
If I can respond, Mr. Wiley, to your comments. I'm not looking to abandon the Parks and Recreation
Right.
Committee. I'm simply suggesting that perhaps it's time to review the charge to the committee. For example, what the city manager just commented on, that the city is under obligation to reduce our water consumption. What are the implications of that on our existing park system?
Right.
Does that mean we need to change some of the landscaping so we have less grass to water? I don't know, but that would, to me, seem to be an appropriate review of the current charge to see if we need to make some modifications and even additions to the existing charge.
The future look and proposals that come before parks and things that can be done with them.
Very good.
Exactly. Thank you.
Did you have any comments on item 15, or has that?
No, I say I'll bring that up at maybe one of the other ones, and I'll talk with Rich about it too.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so where were we? Did we had a motion did we finish Parks and Recreation, or did we have the vote yet? Okay. There's a motion and a second. And is there any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, it's approved. We'll move on to the Personnel Board. Looks like we have one term expiring with an express of interest to be reappointed, and no other applications.
May I ask a question? We have different commissions, boards, committees here. We have heard a report, a very fine report from the Budget Committee. How frequently do we hear regular reports from these other committees in terms of their activities? Is there a set schedule for that, or is it on an as-needed basis?
There isn't a set schedule. Usually you will hear from the committees when there's a project that is involved. There will be a committee recommendation that's brought forward by staff.
So I'm assuming budget drives whether it comes to the city council.
As for the Personnel Board, they were established by ordinance, so they are part of our municipal code. And the City Council established a 3-member committee, 2 to be appointed by the City Council, and 1 to be appointed or chosen by those 2 members. The Personnel Board is somewhat of an inactive committee because they would only respond when there are personnel issues that actually get that far to
Okay.
have to actually be heard by the Personnel Board.
And I've been here 10 years, and never meet once.
I'll move we reappoint Mr. Miller.
I second that.
Okay, is there any discussion? Any opposition? Okay, that's approved. We'll move to the Planning Commission. Planning Commission has 2 terms expiring. Both of the members have expressed interest in another term, and I believe there are no competing applications.
I move that we reappoint Mr. Nichols and Mr. Rojas.
I second.
Okay, and I imagine they both still live in the city? Good.
Yes.
I know Mr. Nichols does. I see his playhouse out the back of his property from a long way away. Okay, is there any opposition? Okay, that's approved. Now we'll move to Senior Center Board. We have a lot of terms expiring. Does everyone want back on?
No. The Senior Center Board, when it was initially established, had the task of running the day-to-day operations of the senior center. They are no longer in that position. They look more at what activities are going to be held there and so forth. So the staff recommendation is to reduce the number of members to 5. Let's see, George Pendered, Rosemary Stupian, and Douglas Ziprick have expressed an interest in continuing to serve. Kenneth Stewart has declined consideration. Margie Worley has been ill and so has requested not to be considered. And we had 2 members who did not respond to our request. We contacted them both by email and by phone.
What's staff recommendation on maybe bringing it down to 3?
To 5. To 5 from 8.
No, we can't bring it down to 3? There's only 3 people that want to stay on it.
Well, there are
That's why I'm
2 that
asking.
are not expiring.
But one of them's too old.
No, they're all expiring in 2011.
No, there are 2 members that are other members,
Oh, I see. All
so
right.
there's still 5.
Oh, okay. All right.
And that reduction would deal with my concern that there's not enough overlap in the memberships, because it's heavily stacked on the 2011 class. And if it's 3 and 2, then it would be more balanced.
Would it be possible, and maybe this is for my own edification more than any of the other council members would need, but I assume there are structures and charges to each of these commissions and boards, and it would be good orientation for me if I had an opportunity to take a look at those. For example, when we say the scope of the work for the Senior Center Board has changed significantly, in some ways I see that as good news. It means it's an evolving organization. But part of that, I think, would also imply that we review what's the original intent and what are the outcomes that we're expecting from them also.
I can certainly provide those to you. Would you like that on the agenda to discuss, to change scope of work, or?
I think that'd be a separate agenda item. I'm
Separate agenda
supportive
item.
of what
All
you're
right.
recommending here for now.
One more thing, as of the member that's still on, Pam, Margie is on there, but she's ill, so therefore we really have 4.
We're actually down to 4
Yes.
members. We have 1 vacancy then.
Well, we don't have an attendance record for this committee. Is that because they don't keep one, or how do we know if the people who didn't respond haven't been great attenders?
I've attended a couple of the meetings, and we mostly have no more than 2 or 3 people that usually show up. It's a harder meeting to attend because it's kind of in the middle of the day, and I don't know if that's a factor, but as it is,
No, most of them are seniors, so they
yeah.
retired.
But I think, like our clerk indicated, the scope of the work initially was to help manage the senior center kind of by committee. Well, that responsibility has now been turned over to one particular person, and that's Joanne Heilman. And unless there's something specific that she wants the committee to address, we're not going to meet unless there's that particular item she wants to address. So it's a standing committee that only meets if there's something specific that they're trying to achieve within the senior center.
Right.
That helps clarify.
Yes, at the beginning, we meet every month because that was when we planned to build the senior center. So we met very often at those times, but now that it's completed and the program is going, and so now Joanne run it, and so we meet every 3 months, and
But I guess, and I'm coming from a bit of an academic background, so pardon me, but I would assume there are some outcomes we're expecting to achieve. Are there any surveys of the people that participate? Are we meeting their needs? Would they like changes in programming? In my mind, some participative governance, even though we have it sounds like a very good director, would still be worthwhile.
yeah, we have a suggestion box, maybe we can publish that.
What's happened in the past is if there's specific issues that are related to the way the senior center was being run. In the past, we've discussed the funding for our senior lunch program, and we've been kept informed as to how are we going to deal with that. And we've been fortunate enough to get some grants from the county folks to help subsidize some of that. And so there's ongoing things that may come up, and if there are suggestions that someone brings up, it's undertaken.
Yeah, is there a motion?
I'll move the agenda item as recommended by the city clerk.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay, is there any further discussion? Any opposition? Hearing none, it's approved. We'll move to the Trails Development Committee. In this case, we have 5 expiring terms, 3 expressions of desire to continue, and 2 non-responders, one of which attended 2 of the last 5 meetings, and the other of which attended 0 of the last 5 meetings. There are 3 that want to continue, and there are apparently no other applications. So the only question at this point is what to do with the 2 who didn't respond. And like I said, 1 attended not at all in the last year, and another attended twice out of 5 meetings.
So what staff recommend is we approve the 3 that responses and reduce the membership from 10 to 8.
I have talked to one of the members, and I'm not sure why he hasn't attended most of them, but he did point out that there was really nothing pressing. And I've looked at their agenda, and the agenda is basically a report from the city as to the status of the trails. So they're not really working on any new, exciting information.
Yes.
I'm reluctant to remove anyone specifically just for attendance issues, but that's up to the council to decide.
Well, the recommendation is not to remove for attendance issues. The recommendation is to remove
But
for
if you reduce it
non-response.
from 10 to 8, you're removing those 2 individuals who are not there.
Only because
Correct,
they
but
didn't
it's because
respond.
they didn't respond to the request. They didn't request renewal. And it's not based on attendance. If it's based on attendance, then we'd keep one of those 2.
I agree with staff's recommendation. Attendance plays some role, but if a member is not willing to even respond to email or phone call, as I understand, or complete an application, which they know they need to be reappointed, it seems like it kind of speaks for itself.
Well,
So if you're looking for motion, I'll move staff's recommendations.
Are they required to fill out an application to continue, or is it more just a verbal?
No, it's a verbal.
Okay. Well, I'm disinclined to kick someone off who has attended 2 of the last 5 meetings just because of a lack of response.
No, we're not. It has nothing to do with attendance.
I'm saying that
No.
the person has expressed interest enough to attend.
Right.
And to me, that's an interest in continuing on the committee. And
That's
then-
almost the same thing. We almost removed someone from a committee based on the fact that they hadn't responded, but yet Mr. Conrad earlier alluded to the fact that that person was attending some of the meetings, was very active, so.
I just have to comment then. If you don't have the courtesy to respond to the city clerk, either by phone or by email, you could attend 100% of the meetings, and I think I would still have issue with that.
Just out of defense for the other side, there are folks who get notifications from the city for money and they don't respond. I'm not always 100% certain that we as a city are always communicating as well as we should. So just to give them the benefit of the doubt, I'm reluctant to remove someone based on the fact that they're not interested. Someone who doesn't attend at all, that perhaps I can understand that. But I know both as individuals. I've actually seen them in the community. As to what the reason there is for not participating, I don't know.
Well, if I can ask the city clerk, what's the process? I mean, we've got some of these commissions and committees are very active. Planning committee, budget committee, so forth, are very active. And others, I feel, I mean, my sense is they're either they've run out of things to do, or we're just kind of perpetuating for historical purposes. I'm not sure, but I'm new on, so I may have the wrong perspective. What would be the process to review this to see if we should make an effort to reinvigorate this? For example, I had forgotten that Councilman Daley is on the Trails Development Committee, so I guess I've got to get my act together on that front, too.
Did you respond to your request to continue?
So, but what would the process be? Are these established and reviewed by the city council or city staff, or how does this work?
All of these committees are standing committees that were appointed by the city council, and all of the members are appointed by the city council on a rotating basis. I could certainly agendize an item with the descriptions that we do have for the council, and you could certainly modify them so their scope of work may change from time to time. Mm-hmm. It's been quite a while since they have been reviewed. And so I think a lot of these committees, when we had the trails and we were making new trails and having trail signs and direction signs, there was a lot to do. Mm-hmm. That's completed. Mm-hmm. So, but there may be other things that that they could be doing, or you just need to have a brainstorming session, and perhaps some of the committees could be combined. So there'd be a greater variety of things to do, probably with fewer members.
I would even suggest it might be useful to have at least the chair of the committee come at the time when we're discussing the role of that committee, so that we don't overlook something. As Mr. Wiley was saying, there are things that the Parks and Recreation Committee are involved with that I would have never known unless he had commented on them. So I don't want to overlook what's already occurring, but we don't have representation from most of these committees, and I think that would be helpful for me.
Perhaps we should schedule it for the fall, which would give the committees an opportunity to meet and discuss some of the issues that were brought up here.
I think that would be an excellent
and some
suggestion.
ways to respond.
And I will put on the agenda for each committee, and I will mention it to them.
It's a good thing we don't pay people for these committees, or we'd almost reflect the state of California.
Well, I attend almost every one of them, and it's getting...
Yeah, the overtime is getting pricey. So I would prefer to handle this one in two different motions. So would the maker of the motion amend it to start with a reappointment of the members who have expressed desire to continue, and then we can consider the other ones as a separate motion?
I will be glad to accede to the wishes of the chair, and I will make that action and move it, reappoint the three individuals that expressed an interest in continuing.
I'll go ahead and second that.
Okay, is there any opposition to that one? Hearing none, they're approved. Now we have hanging in the balance the Trails Development Committee attendance of the two who have not responded.
How about I do this? How about, I know for sure that Mr. Jonathan Sokol, he's an attorney, and I think he's working in L.A. now. He used to work at this VA over here, but he's no longer working here, so he have a hard time coming to the meeting because we meet at 6 o'clock. So I haven't seen him, but Levy, he does attend once in a while, so I can call him and to see if he's still interested to be in the committee. I'd be happy to bring it back.
That's a great idea. Let's make one more effort to contact both of them and see if they're truly interested and perhaps motivate them to attend more often as well. I think that's a great suggestion. I would like to make a motion that we entertain our city manager personally contacting these two members and seeing if they're still interested, and then they'll respond back to us for our next meeting for July the 26th meeting, I think.
I am not strongly opposed, but I will oppose, and I agree with Councilman Duper's comments.
Okay. So there's a motion. Is there a second? I guess it doesn't require a motion because it's essentially an instruction to staff.
Yes, can I probably request that we move it to August because that's when they plan to meet. Plus I'm on vacation next month, so.
Yeah. Okay. Can you accept that as instruction to staff? Okay, then there's no motion involved. Okay. Okay, that's the committees. Now we will move to item 18, designation of voting delegates and alternates to the League of California Cities Annual Conference. Who wants to go?
Mr. Mayor, as you know, I sit on the Inland Empire Board for the League of California Cities, so I'm not certain what role that plays in this conference or if I represent the city anyway or not. Madam Clerk, you know?
This is their annual conference, so any council member could be designated as the voting delegate, and any council member could be designated as the alternate.
I think in the past, we've had the city manager attend if it was close enough, but if you want to be a delegate and entertain the idea of attending the conference, you're more than welcome to.
Well, I don't mind doing it. I just didn't know if I was going to be asked to go anyway from sitting on the Inland Empire Board.
It's actually interesting that this is the first time that a council person from the city of Loma Linda sits on that board. So
right.
We're very thrilled that you're on that, and hopefully that you'll carry on all of our concerns.
It'd be a busy organization the next couple of days, I think.
Yeah, filing lawsuits, I believe.
That sounds like a good idea to me.
Well, I make a motion that, I'm not sure it requires a motion, that we designate Mr. Duper as our liaison for the League of Cities as a delegate.
And Mr. Typet as the alternate.
And Mr. Typet as the alternate, so I know he just tries to make sure he gets out of it.
And this is still a ways out, so absent any conflicts with scheduling and whether or not I may go because I'm already on that other board, so we can always discuss it again if we have to, but I'll accept that.
I'll second that motion with a comment that given the new budget challenges that the state is handing down to municipalities like Loma Linda, it's imperative that we have some good representation there, and so to have two people there I think is a good idea. I had the privilege of attending a League of Cities orientation meeting in January and found it very, very useful and informative, so I think it's important we stay actively involved with them.
Okay, so there's a motion, a second. Do you have further comment?
Just a further comment on that, and there are, just a reminder to my fellow council members, there's a lot of fundraising events that the league does, and I think there's something coming up here in July also.
Not to get sidetracked, but Councilman Duper and myself have been the only real active members on this board who've tried to attend some of the league dinners, and they're very informative. Not only do we get to network with other council persons, but also folks from the county. And since we're not going to meet until the 26th, we will be attending a dinner on the 14th, and the topic of discussion is pension reform. So we're continuing to be actively involved in keeping up with some of the things that does affect us and the rest of the state.
Hopefully you can persuade them with your influence and what needs to be done.
Actually, at the very end of this meeting, I have some information for the citizens that they can participate in some of the things, but I'll leave that when we get to that point.
Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any opposition to the designations? Hearing none, it's approved. We'll move to item 19, Council Bill R-2011-31, adopting a fund balance policy.
Mayor, council members, this is a in order for us to be in compliance with the Governmental Accounting Board's GASB, which is GASB 54, which is basically making changes to fund balance reporting and providing us with additional definitions to our governmental fund types. And so in order to be compliant, we needed to adopt it before the year end. So basically we're establishing a fund balance policy, which we haven't had, and then we're adopting a resolution to actually commit, which is one of the new definitions of fund balance, our $3.5 million that we have identified as a rainy day reserve. So that's what these actions will do.
I'll move Council Bill. Is that appropriate now?
Yes.
Move Council Bill number R-2011-31, adopting a fund balance policy in compliance with GASB 54.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? Is there any opposition? Hearing no opposition, it's approved. Reports of councilmen. Mr. Popescu.
I've got a couple of items. And this is kind of short notice, but I think that it's never too late. Some of you may or may not have known that we're going through a redistricting, and one of the major issues that's coming up is that the city of Loma Linda has been proposed to be removed from the district of our longstanding Congressman, Mr. Jerry Lewis, who has been an active supporter of not only of our city but our institutions. It has come to my attention that because of his efforts, Loma Linda University has received close to $200 million over the last 25 years in funding from the federal government, and we think that he played a vital role in that. We think it's in our interest of our citizens that we remain in this district. The commission that makes the decision on redistricting is made up of 15 individuals, and they make a decision for the rest of the state. There's already been some public workshops. This is the first draft, but it is important that the citizens get more involved in expressing their desires that we remain within this district. So what a couple of pieces of information. There is a telephone number that people can call and express their desire that Loma Linda remain within Mr. Jerry Lewis's district. And I'll give you the telephone number, and then I'll make a suggestion. The number is 1-866-356-5217, and hopefully this broadcast will be replayed. And once again, the number is 1-866-356-5217. And that's a telephone number for the California Redistricting Commission. And I also request that since we do have Channel 3, which is public information, that we can put that number up on the screen. So for those people who want to express a desire that we get removed or we stay in, they still have an opportunity to do so. It is my view that we remain, and I've been contacted by his office on 2 occasions, that we try to do everything we can to inform the public and see if we can get them more involved in communicating this very important issue. This is critical. I think that if we do get removed, our ability to access federal funds and other grants significantly decreases, because we would be moving into a district for Congressman Baca, and he has not always been on the same page with the needs and desires of the city of Loma Linda. So it is critical, and it will impact us. I'll give you a quick example. It's because of Mr. Lewis that we're able to get a lot of funding for the Tippecanoe Anderson interchange. If there's other interchanges in the future, and if we're not able to get some of that funding, we will be impacted, and your quality of life will decrease. There's no doubt about that. So I think it's important for everybody to be aware of that. The other quick issue, and I don't know if anybody else wanted to comment on this. Go ahead, Mr. Brown.
I'll make one comment on the redistricting. First of all, I totally agree with the praise that Congressman Lewis should get for helping this community with various projects. No question about it. He's been very instrumental. But I'm not certain I, as a council member, am ready to take a stand for or against redistricting with some of the lines till we see and hear a little bit more. I guess having been around a long time when Congressman Baca represented this area back in the state legislature, I actually felt he was very helpful to our concerns and needs as well, and I am optimistic that if things evolved with the new lines the way they seem to be, that he would step up to the plate. But I do agree it always causes some concern with changing, but I would personally like to see us wait a little more to be clear on some of the issues, and I again want to thank Congressman Lewis, but I have faith that Congressman Baca would step up to the plate if that does happen.
The other issue that I wanted to bring to your attention is you might have heard on the news recently that the state legislature just passed the recent budget today, and as of right now, I haven't received an email stating that the governor has signed it. However, we anticipate he will be signing it. The California League of Cities constantly sends us information to try to get us more involved in this. This is a issue that is going to affect Loma Linda to the tunes of millions of dollars. There's a couple of telephone numbers that I would urge people to call. One is the telephone number for the chairman of actually he's the majority leader, which is Senator Steinberg, and his telephone number is 916-651-4011. And you can also call the governor's office. His number is 916-324-2472. And we urge that the governor veto this bill. This is one bill that will negatively impact our city. Thank you.
Okay, are there any reports of officers? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.